Are you exhausted by the endless cycle of challenges that seem to consume your existence? Have you grown weary of the paralyzing hesitation that transforms grown individuals into prisoners of their own excuses and regrets? The average person squanders their entire lifetime staring into voids instead of constructing bridges to cross them. They drown themselves in a sea of complaints, justifications, and paralyzing fears that keep them trapped in mediocrity. What would your reality look like if you could permanently escape this pathetic existence and join the ranks of those who truly understand power? Niccolò Machiavelli grasped a fundamental truth that the masses will never comprehend, no matter how many centuries pass. Survival, influence, and absolute dominance belong exclusively to those individuals who adapt with lightning speed, strategize with surgical precision, and execute their plans with ice-cold calculation. The weak crumble beneath the crushing weight of obstacles, allowing themselves to be buried alive by circumstances. However, the strong possess an entirely different mindset. They systematically transform every single challenge into a stepping stone, every barrier into a weapon they can wield against their enemies and competitors. From this precise moment forward, your behavior will undergo a radical transformation. You will cease your pathetic complaining. You will stop feeding the shadows with your precious energy and attention. The problems that seem so overwhelming to ordinary people are nothing more than elaborate mirages, carefully constructed illusions designed to distract you from your true purpose and potential. Your exclusive focus on solutions becomes your most valuable currency in the marketplace of power and influence. Channel your energy towards solutions and watch as the entire world begins to bend to your will. Continue to ignore this principle and you will remain forever anonymous, lost among the billions of forgotten souls. This message is not delivered as gentle inspiration or motivational fluff. This is ruthless preparation for war, the beginning of your complete mental and emotional transformation into something far more dangerous than you ever imagined possible. The typical individual encounters a problem and immediately becomes paralyzed by fear and uncertainty. They discuss it endlessly with anyone who will listen. They complain about it to friends and strangers alike. They construct elaborate narratives around their suffering until the problem completely consumes their identity and destroys their potential. This pattern of behavior explains precisely why they remain trapped in mediocrity for their entire lives, because their minds have become permanently chained to the very obstacles they claim to want to overcome. But your presence here indicates something entirely different about your character and potential. You are not here to remain among the weak and forgotten masses. You have arrived at this moment to completely reprogram your mental operating system into something sharper, colder, and infinitely more powerful than anything you have ever been before. You are here to transform yourself into something untouchable by the petty concerns and emotional manipulations that control ordinary people. Machiavelli's core principle operates with brutal simplicity that cuts through all the noise and confusion. Never waste a single gram of your precious energy in areas where it cannot generate measurable returns on your investment. Thinking obsessively about problems produces absolutely nothing of value, but channeling every ounce of that same energy into decisive action generates solutions, creates results, and builds real power that others must respect. The philosophical framework that Machiavelli constructed teaches us this unforgiving truth about human nature and the mechanics of influence. The disturbing reality is that most people secretly derive pleasure from their problems and challenges because these obstacles provide them with the perfect justification for their inaction and cowardice. Problems create the comfortable illusion of struggle while simultaneously allowing fear to hide beneath the surface, protected from examination or challenge. But this weakness will never define you or limit your potential. Starting from this exact point in time, when any problem emerges in your path, you will not panic like a frightened child. You will not collapse under pressure. You will not freeze like a deer in headlights. Instead, you will immediately narrow your focus to identify the coldest and most direct solution available. You will systematically strip away all emotional reactions. You will remove fear from the equation entirely, and you will act with calculated precision. This is where Machiavelli's principle truly resides, at the precise intersection where feelings end and absolute control begins. This is the exact location where you permanently separate yourself from the weak masses who will spend their entire lives drowning in their own emotional chaos. You already understand intellectually that focusing on solutions is superior to focusing on problems. But how do you actually differentiate yourself from the crowd of pretenders and wannabes? There exists a strategy that is even more ruthlessly effective, a psychological approach that silences chaos and commands respect through pure force of character. True power never belongs to those who make the most noise or display the most emotion. Power belongs exclusively to the calculated individuals who can position themselves at the very center of complete chaos while remaining perfectly calm and unmoved by the storm around them. While everyone else consumes themselves alive with panic and emotional reactions, the individual who fixates on problems inevitably drowns in them. Their emotions assume complete control over their decision-making process. Their judgment becomes clouded and unreliable, and they react impulsively instead of governing their circumstances with intelligence and strategy. However, the person who fixes their gaze exclusively on solutions transforms into something genuinely dangerous and threatening to the established order. While others waste precious time screaming about the ship that is sinking beneath their feet, this individual has already begun constructing the life raft that will carry him to safety. He has already calculated 3 moves ahead of everyone else, positioning himself for victory while others are still figuring out what game they are playing. This represents the true essence of Machiavellian power: cold, relentless, and strategically brilliant in its execution. The world does not reward those who excel at explaining their struggles and broadcasting their weaknesses. The world rewards only those who solve problems and deliver results that others cannot ignore. This explains why individuals who possess real control appear completely untouchable to ordinary observers. They never announce their wounds or broadcast their vulnerabilities to the world. Instead, they quietly construct their solutions in private, and when they finally move, the masses instinctively follow their lead, not out of love or loyalty, but out of pure necessity and recognition of superior capability. Machiavelli would teach us that this pattern repeats throughout history because most people desperately crave leadership while simultaneously fearing the responsibility that comes with it. They prefer to surrender their power and decision-making authority rather than face their problems directly and solve them independently. When you master the art of creating solutions, you automatically master people as well. They will orbit around you like planets around the sun because you represent clarity and direction in the midst of their personal storms and confusion. This fundamental understanding explains why Machiavelli held such contempt for weakness in all its forms. Cold control sends an unmistakable signal to the entire world. I will not be defeated by circumstances. I will not be distracted by irrelevant noise. I will not surrender or give up when things become difficult. In that silence, in that emotional containment and self-control, you transform yourself into something that most individuals will never understand or achieve, an unshakable force of nature that bends reality to its will. Machiavelli's cold strategy positions you above the chaos that consumes ordinary people. But to truly govern your environment and circumstances, you need to understand and implement the masterstroke that separates rulers from subjects. What is the secret to becoming a true ruler of chaos rather than its victim? Chaos represents the natural state of the world and human society. People scream at each other, they fight over trivial matters, they panic at the first sign of difficulty, and they drown themselves in the deafening noise of their own repeated failures and disappointments. They claim that life is fundamentally unfair and biased against them. They insist that problems are infinite and unsolvable. They declare that the weight of existence is simply too much for any individual to bear. This represents the language of the powerless and defeated, the vocabulary of those who have already surrendered before the battle even begins. Machiavelli understood something essential about the nature of reality and human psychology. Chaos is not your enemy or obstacle. Chaos is your greatest opportunity for advancement and domination. When the herd becomes blinded by fear and emotional reactions, the individual who can clearly see solutions becomes the inevitable ruler of that group. While others run in panicked circles, the true strategist calmly constructs the path forward, and that path automatically becomes a source of tremendous power and influence. Take a moment to observe the world around you with clear eyes. Most individuals completely collapse the moment pressure increases beyond their comfort zone. They cry about stress and seek sympathy from anyone who will listen. They hide behind elaborate excuses as if these justifications were protective shields. But these shields are constructed from glass and illusion. The moment reality strikes with greater force, they shatter into 1,000 pieces, leaving the person completely exposed and vulnerable. Now imagine yourself operating from a completely different paradigm and mindset. Picture yourself standing calmly in the middle of fire, smoke, and absolute panic. Your breathing remains steady and controlled. Your mind stays razor-sharp and focused. Your decisions maintain surgical precision even under extreme pressure. This represents the true power of emotional coldness and mental discipline. This is what transforms individuals like yourself into something genuinely dangerous and unpredictable. Machiavelli's philosophy teaches us an unforgiving truth about human nature and social dynamics. Fear operates as the most contagious disease that exists in human society. Once fear spreads through a group, entire crowds collapse into chaos and become easily manipulated by those who understand this principle. However, genuine calm, the kind of unbreakable composure that cannot be shaken by external circumstances, proves even more contagious than fear itself. When you remain completely unmoved by chaos, others instinctively begin to lean on your stability and strength. They follow your leadership without question. They obey your direction without resistance. But why does this psychological pattern occur so predictably? The answer is simple. In the midst of chaos, certainty becomes king, and whoever embodies certainty automatically assumes command of the situation. This explains why focusing exclusively on solutions makes you untouchable in any social or professional environment. Problems scatter people like dust in the wind, creating confusion and panic wherever they spread. Solutions magnetize people, drawing them toward whoever possesses the answers they desperately need. The individual with reliable solutions never needs to beg for respect or recognition. He commands both automatically through demonstration of capability. Even his silence carries tremendous weight and authority because people understand intuitively that he moves with clear purpose and direction. Now you understand that focusing on solutions transforms you into the ruler of chaos. But where does this psychological force actually manifest and take root? The answer is both simple and profound. It begins and ends in your mind, the ultimate fortress that determines everything else about your life and capabilities. Every empire that ever dominated the world, every dynasty that ever ruled over millions, began with one fundamental requirement: a fortress. These structures needed massive stone walls to keep enemies outside, reinforced gates to filter who could enter, and who must remain excluded, and tall towers to spot threats before they could reach the walls. But let me reveal something crucial that most people never realize. The greatest fortress is not constructed from stone, steel, or fire. The greatest fortress is your own mind, properly trained and disciplined. The weak allow problems to invade their mental gates without resistance. Every fear, every insult, every disappointment, they permit these negative forces to march directly into their consciousness and occupy valuable space in their heads. Their minds become cities overrun by invaders, where every thought becomes a parasite systematically draining their strength and potential. They fall not because of the actual problem itself, but because they surrendered their mental fortress without even attempting to fight back. Machiavelli warned rulers never to depend on the loyalty of others for their security, but instead to build their own strength so solidly that betrayal could never destroy them. This identical principle applies directly to your mental development and psychological defense systems. Do not depend on the world to provide you with peace and tranquility. Do not depend on other people to clear obstacles from your path. Instead, construct a fortress of thought so impenetrable that no storm can break through its defenses. Machiavelli reveals another crucial truth about human nature and social dynamics. People will constantly test your mental walls and boundaries. They will launch their chaos, their drama, and their weakness directly at you, hoping that you will absorb their negative energy and carry their burdens. Why do they engage in this behavior? Because if you can be manipulated into carrying their loads, they never have to develop the strength to carry those loads themselves. But remember this fundamental principle. Your fortress is not their garbage dump or emotional waste disposal system. If you open your gates to every problem that approaches, you invite your own destruction and downfall. Here is the Machiavellian approach to mental defense and psychological warfare. Your mind must be ruthlessly selective, cold, and strategically focused. You permit entry only to elements that make you stronger and more capable. Solutions, strategies, and useful knowledge. These elements gain admission to your mental fortress. Complaints, fears, and meaningless distractions, these are executed at the gates without mercy or hesitation. Your mental security depends on this ruthless selectivity. Imagine this scene, a king sitting high in the tower of his fortress, hearing the noise of chaos raging outside his walls, but remaining perfectly still and composed. Fires spread throughout the countryside, crowds scream in terror and confusion, but his fortress stands unmoved. He does not run toward the crowd to join their panic. He does not collapse under the weight of external pressure. Instead, he waits, he observes, and he calculates his next move with precision. Only when the timing is perfect does he act with decisive force. This unshakable composure is what makes him untouchable and feared by his enemies. You must transform yourself into that king, ruling over your own mental kingdom with absolute authority. Every thought, every reaction, every emotion must pass through your internal gates and security checkpoints. Ask yourself this crucial question: does this thought serve my interests? Does it make me stronger and more capable? Does it lead me toward a solution? If the answer is no, you destroy it without hesitation or mercy. This represents the core knowledge that Machiavelli passed down through centuries. Cold discipline, relentless clarity, and emotional control so strong it functions like impenetrable armor. When your mind operates as a true fortress, no insult can break your composure, no betrayal can surprise you, and no failure can bury you beneath its weight. Your mind is your fortress, but it only becomes truly impenetrable through relentless practice and unwavering commitment to these principles. So what is the next step in sharpening your mind like a blade that cuts through any obstacle? The masses glorify their problems with religious devotion. They polish them until they shine. They display them like trophies of suffering for the world to see and admire. Listen carefully to how they speak about their lives. My life is so difficult. The system is rigged against me. Nobody understands my struggles. They wear their challenges like crowns, seeking sympathy and validation for their pain. However, these crowns are forged from thorns, cutting deeper into their flesh with every excuse they make and every complaint they voice. You must never allow yourself to fall into this pathetic weakness, because problems are not crowns to be worn with pride. Problems are chains that bind you to mediocrity and failure. Every time you speak about your problems, every time you feed them with attention and emotional energy, those chains tighten around your neck, restricting your movement and limiting your potential. Machiavelli warned that individuals who become obsessed with obstacles automatically destroy their own power and effectiveness. Why does this pattern occur so predictably? Because attention functions as a form of currency in the marketplace of consciousness. Whatever you focus your attention on grows larger and more influential in your life. Focus on problems and you multiply them exponentially. Focus on solutions and you transform them into weapons that can be used to conquer any challenge. This represents the ruthless art of solution-focused thinking. You treat every problem as raw material and nothing more. You do not fear it. You do not worship it. You systematically break it down, extract the solution it contains, and discard the rest. This process is cold, efficient, and surgically precise. Machiavelli's philosophy reveals that most people actually derive pleasure from their problems and challenges. They cling to these obstacles because problems provide them with a ready-made identity and excuse system. Without problems, they would be forced to confront their own emptiness and lack of direction. This explains why they resist solutions when they are offered. They prefer complaining to evolving. They prefer remaining victims rather than risking the challenge of becoming rulers of their own destinies. You must operate from a completely different paradigm. You must cultivate laser-focused attention on solutions rather than problems. You do not surrender to the poison of excuses and justifications. You do not share your problems with the world because the world does not care about your struggles. It only respects your results. Instead, you dissect each challenge and ask one simple question: what is the solution? Here is the paradox that few people understand. Once you transform yourself into a person of solutions, people will simultaneously envy you and depend on you. They will resent your power because it exposes their own weakness and inadequacy, but they will orbit around you because you represent something they desperately lack: clarity and direction in the midst of confusion. They will perceive you as untouchable, and in reality you will be untouchable. But this transformation requires tremendous discipline and commitment. It demands that you eliminate the habit of talking about problems. Talking about problems is weakness. Creating solutions is power that cannot be ignored or denied. Starting from this moment, every time a problem enters your life, you will train yourself to respond like a strategist rather than like a victim. You step back emotionally, remove reactive feelings from the equation, and dissect the challenge with surgical precision. You do not ask, "Why is this happening to me?" You ask, "What advantage is hidden within this situation? What move will break through this obstacle? How can I transform this problem into a weapon I can use?" This represents pure Machiavellian thinking in action, absolute control over yourself and mastery over chaos. It is not gentle, it is not comfortable, it is cold and surgically precise in its execution, because the individual who controls his mind controls his results, and the individual who controls his results controls real power that others must acknowledge. Solution-focused thinking is the weapon, but to become a true master of this mental warfare, you need to understand the complete blueprint. What is the anatomy of power, and how can you systematically construct it in your own life? Power is not magical. It is not bestowed by gods, destiny, or luck. Power is built brick by brick, thought by thought, decision by decision. It has a specific anatomy and structure, and once you understand this blueprint, you stop being prey and begin your transformation into a predator. The first organ of power is focused attention and concentration. Where your attention flows, energy follows, and results inevitably emerge. The weak scatter their focus across 1,000 different problems and distractions. They divide themselves into fragments, bleeding their energy into gossip, fear, and resentment until nothing substantial remains. They are drained completely until they become empty shells of their former potential. The powerful operate from the opposite approach entirely. They compress their focus into solutions with laser-like intensity. Like a blade sharpened to a single point, they pierce through obstacles, while others shatter themselves against the same barriers. This concentrated focus becomes their primary weapon in the battle for success and dominance. The second organ of power is emotional control and regulation. Machiavelli taught rulers never to allow love or hatred to blind their judgment and decision-making capabilities. Emotions are internal storms that cloud vision, create imbalance, and make you predictable to your enemies. The individual who cannot master himself will never possess the capability to master others or control his environment. When you reveal your emotional triggers and vulnerabilities, people will press those buttons to manipulate and control you. But when you remain cold and non-reactive, you become indecipherable and untouchable. Your emotional control becomes a form of psychological armor that protects you from manipulation and gives you tremendous advantage in any conflict or negotiation. The third organ of power is adaptability and strategic flexibility. Problems exist as constantly shifting terrain that changes its shape and structure. They transform, they grow, they test your determination and resolve. Most individuals panic when the ground shifts beneath their feet, but the Machiavellian individual adapts instantaneously to new conditions. He treats instability as opportunity rather than threat. He changes tactics like a general who understands that the battlefield is alive and constantly evolving, always searching for the angle that leads to victory. Adaptability is not weakness or compromise. It is flexibility armed with strategic intelligence. Like a river that flows around rocks, strategic adaptability always defeats rigid resistance. The fourth organ of power is strategic silence and concealment. The weak share too much information about their struggles and plans. They cry about their problems to anyone who will listen. They reveal their fears and insecurities. They surrender their strategy to competitors and enemies. The powerful operate like shadows, revealing only results, never intentions or methods. They act first and explain later, striking with precision before their targets understand what is happening. This represents the Machiavellian art of concealment and misdirection. Problems discussed aloud multiply and spread like cancer. Problems kept secret and resolved silently build an aura of mystery and competence that others find irresistible. The fifth organ of power is decisive action under pressure. Nothing destroys personal strength faster than hesitation and indecision. Most individuals hesitate because they are addicted to uncertainty and paralyzed by the need for guarantees. They want absolute assurance before making any move, but guarantees do not exist in the real world. The powerful act with cold decisiveness, even under extreme uncertainty. They understand that hesitation is more dangerous than risk itself, because while the hesitant individual remains frozen in paralysis, the decisive individual is already 3 moves ahead, actively shaping reality according to his will and vision. Combine all 5 elements: focused attention, emotional control, strategic adaptability, calculated silence, and decisive action. And you possess the complete anatomy of power. You hold the blueprint that Machiavelli carved into history through his observations of successful rulers. You have access to the mindset by which kings, governors, and conquerors lived and dominated their environments. But here is the darkest truth that you must understand and accept. The world does not want you to possess this kind of power. Society thrives on your weakness and dependence. Corporations, governments, and even personal relationships benefit when you remain trapped in problems, addicted to emotions, and paralyzed by fear. A broken individual is easy to control and manipulate. A distracted person is easy to use and exploit. But an individual focused on solutions becomes genuinely dangerous to the established order. He cannot be owned, controlled, or manipulated by external forces. His independence threatens those who profit from weakness and dependence. Weakness is an illusion that society sells you, a poison designed to make you easy to control and exploit. But how do you shatter this illusion once and for all, freeing yourself from mental slavery? From the moment you were born, you were programmed to obey authority, to conform to expectations, to complain about problems while waiting for someone else to solve them. Society feeds you this poison daily through media, education, and social conditioning. You are only human. It's okay to be fragile. Don't take risks. Stay safe. These are not universal truths. They are chains forged to keep you trapped in mediocrity and dependence. Machiavelli understood this system of control. He wrote that individuals are moved by fear, self-interest, and necessity. Those who rise to power understand this psychological game completely, while those who remain weak are played by it without ever realizing what is happening to them. If you still perceive yourself as fundamentally fragile, you have already lost the battle for your own life. You become food for the strong, prey for those who understand the game better than you do. Machiavelli reveals why this lie persists throughout society. Weakness makes you easier to control and exploit. An individual who believes in his own fragility becomes automatically dependent on others. He needs leaders to think for him, systems to protect him, and constant validation from others to feel secure. He transforms into a servant while pretending to be free, a slave who believes he is independent. But you are not here to serve others or live as a slave to their expectations. You are here to burn away the illusion of weakness, to strip away the layers of conditioning that have been forced upon you. Here is the truth that the world desperately wants to hide from you. Your mind is capable of far more than anyone has ever told you. Pain, betrayal, and loss do not define your character or limit your potential. They transform you into something stronger and more capable. Pressure is not your enemy. It is your training ground where strength is forged. Every problem you encounter is not a wall blocking your path. It is a mirror reflecting back to you, testing whether you are a ruler or a victim. The weak glorify their pain and suffering. They post about it online, seeking sympathy and attention. They cry about it in conversations, using their struggles to gain pity from others. They wear their wounds like badges of honor, but sympathy is completely useless for building real power. Sympathy will not make you strong or capable. Sympathy will not protect you in the battles that matter. Sympathy will not help you achieve victory over your circumstances. Stop feeding on pity and self-pity. These emotions are food for the powerless and defeated. If you truly want strength, you must embrace suffering and dissect it until only the valuable lesson remains. This is the Machiavellian path, the way of individuals who build empires rather than excuses. Understand this fundamental reality. Nobody is coming to save you from your circumstances. Not the government, not your friends, not even your family members can rescue you from the challenges you face. Dependence is weakness, disguised as comfort and security. True strength must be constructed by your own hands, with every brick placed through discipline, every wall raised through focused effort, and every weapon sharpened through the creation of solutions. Machiavelli's philosophy demands that you cut away dead weight from your life without mercy. This means eliminating toxic people, weak habits, and pointless distractions that drain your energy. You cannot carry everyone with you on your journey to power. You cannot save those who refuse to save themselves. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must not hesitate to be cruel when cruelty serves the greater purpose of survival and success. You must be ruthless enough to choose yourself over those who drain your resources and distract you from your goals. This is not cruelty for its own sake. This is strategic necessity. The focused individual does not entertain weakness in any form. He does not explain his problems to others, seeking sympathy or validation. He does not beg for pity or understanding. He does not collapse under pressure like ordinary people. Instead, he uses pressure as fuel for growth and transformation. He extracts solutions from situations where others find only despair and hopelessness. And because of this rare ability, he becomes valuable, powerful, and genuinely dangerous to those who oppose him. Now that you understand the fundamental laws for becoming untouchable, how do you apply this knowledge to become an unshakable force in your environment? To accomplish this transformation, you must master 3 core laws derived from Machiavelli's philosophy. The first law is govern yourself completely. If someone can irritate you into reaction, that person controls you. If they can humiliate you into emotional response, they possess you like a puppet on strings. Weak individuals are marionettes whose strings can be pulled by anyone intelligent enough to understand their triggers and vulnerabilities. The untouchable individual cuts these strings permanently. He governs himself with absolute authority. He remains unshakable in the face of insults, impassive when provoked, indecipherable in his silence and composure. His calm becomes terrifying to others because everyone understands intuitively that when he does strike, it will be with surgical precision and devastating effect. The individual who cannot govern his own emotions and reactions will always be governed by others who understand this weakness. Self-control is the foundation upon which all other forms of power are built. The second law is transform problems into weapons systematically. Problems are raw material, nothing more and nothing less. The weak become paralyzed by challenges. They complain endlessly. They glorify their suffering as if it were an achievement. But the untouchable individual extracts solutions from problems like steel from ore. Pain becomes discipline through this process. Betrayal transforms into wisdom, and failure becomes high-octane fuel for future success. Machiavelli wrote that individuals respect results, not excuses, and results come only from solutions, never from complaints or self-pity. Problems are irrelevant to your success. Only solutions matter. The more solutions you create, the more power you command over your environment. The more power you command, the less anyone can touch you or limit your potential. The third law is walk alone, command many. The untouchable individual does not need crowds for validation or security. He does not beg for approval or acceptance from others. He is complete in solitude, and paradoxically, this is exactly why others choose to follow him. His strength exposes their weakness by contrast. His clarity illuminates their confusion. His calm reveals their internal panic and chaos. Psychology teaches us that most people desperately crave leadership because they fear the responsibility that comes with independence and self-direction. This is why, once you master yourself completely, people begin to orbit around you without being asked or invited. They lean on your stability for support. They follow your direction not out of loyalty or affection, but out of pure necessity and recognition of superior capability. The path to becoming more solution-focused is now crystal clear, but to cement this new identity permanently, you need one final element. The last words you will hear before leaving weakness behind and entering the realm of true power. Everything you have absorbed during this time was not entertainment or casual information. It was systematic preparation for transformation. Starting today, your identity undergoes fundamental change. You will walk differently, think differently, and respond to life's challenges from a completely new paradigm. When problems arise, you will not complain like a victim. You will calculate like a strategist. When betrayal strikes, you will not collapse like the weak. You will adapt like a survivor. When chaos surrounds you, you will not panic like the masses. You will dominate like a ruler. This is the untouchable mindset, the creed of rulers, strategists, and predators who walk through storms without flinching or losing their composure. This message serves as a battle cry, a brutal reprogramming of your mental operating system. The world will not respect your problems or show sympathy for your struggles. It will only respect your solutions and the results you produce. The weak drown in comfortable illusions. The strong shape reality according to their will and vision. Which category will define your future? If you have made it this far, your presence here is not accidental or random. Many others gave up along the way, surrendering to noise, distraction, and the comfortable embrace of their own weaknesses. But not you. You remained focused and committed, and because of this persistence, you are already no longer the same person who began this journey. You are now an initiate, a survivor who has proven his dedication. The journey you thought was merely a video has now taken root inside your consciousness. A seed has been planted in your mind. It does not scream or demand immediate attention. It simply exists, silent and relentless, waiting for the right moment to grow and flourish. You now perceive the world not as a place of problems and obstacles, but as a field of opportunities waiting to be harvested. The fortress we have constructed together is not theoretical. It is your new reality and operating system. Now, to seal this transformation permanently, perform an act of consciousness and strength. The crowd will not understand the significance, but the meaning is not for them. It is for you alone. Comment below. I am not the problem. I am the solution. This simple phrase functions as an oath and declaration. It is your statement that you will not be shaped and molded by the world, but that you will shape and mold it according to your vision and will. And if this philosophy has touched your soul, if you are ready to go beyond the surface and dive deep into true mastery over yourself and your circumstances, the final challenge awaits. Join our community of transformation, subscribe to the channel, and go beyond by becoming a member. This is not merely a payment, it is a commitment and investment in your own development. It is your signature indicating that you are willing to fight not for sympathy, but for real power and capability. Are you ready to emerge from the darkness and become the predator you were born to be? Remember, the weak drown in illusion while the strong create reality.